Hey y'all know I love me a good moonshine story, and today I have a story about a 19th century mountain outlaw from right here in the mountains of western North Carolina. His name was Lewis Redmond, aka the Appalachian Robin Hood, or the King of Moonshiners. Every time I read a story about a famous moonshiner, it says they're the King of Moonshiners, but he's known for his moonshining and his defiance of the law. He was born in 1854 in Swain County, North Carolina, which is the same county that Cherokee's in. His family moved and he is raised in Transylvania County, North Carolina. You might hear him called Major Lewis Redmond, because when he was a youngster, he'd hang around the camps of Confederate soldiers during the Civil War, and that nickname came even more fitting in his later years as he is able to organize and lead men on his shenanigans. He's taught the business by his daddy and some other fellers, and he became a distiller of the Mountain Dew. And Redmond, he was the only surviving son out of 3 boys, and there were also 7 daughters. And during a raid of the Redmond family, his daddy was arrested and sent off to the clink. And the shock of the raid ended up causing his mama, who was already ailing, to pass away. And the harsh conditions of the prison caused his daddy to pass on. And that left Redmond to take care of his 7 sisters the best way he knew how. At age 21, he started running that precious fluid, as he called it. And the federal revenuers, or revenuers as they were called, they took out a warrant on him. And Deputy U.S. Marshal Alfred Duckworth held him at gunpoint whilst he was out making a delivery, and things got out of hand, and Redmond ended up fatally wounding him. He always claimed it was self-defense. Well, Redmond escaped to upstate South Carolina in a little town called Pickens, which was known as the dark corner of the state due to its moonshine associations. And Redmond set up an extensive moonshine operation and a 5-year run with the law. In 1877, when he was 22, he and a feller named Amos Ladd, who Redmond ended up marrying his sister Addie that same year, were tricked into going to an abandoned house on the border of North Carolina and South Carolina in a little mountain town. They thought they was making a delivery of 25 gallons of whiskey. They waited around, and they ended up falling asleep around midnight, and then the law broke in and arrested them. They bound their hands in front of them, and Deputy Marshal Barton stole Redmond's $186 he had on him. And when Redmond asked him to fetch his boots for him, Barton let go of him, and Redmond made his move and escaped. Redmond ran to a nearby house, and everybody was always on his side, and they gave him a coat and shoes and a shotgun and loosened the ropes on his hands. And Redmond hid in the bushes, and not long after, here came the wagons with the marshals and with his buddy in crime, Amos. And also, they still had his $186 and 2 of his horses. And Redmond shot at him, and he did hit Deputy Barton. It wasn't fatal, but he did wound him. And Amos and all the fracas ended up escaping. When they realized that Amos had escaped, they fired some shots in the air. And then Raymond knew that that meant Amos had escaped, and he whistled for him, and Amos found him, and they got away. About a week went by, and Redmond got madder than a bulled owl about being tricked and about his money and his horses being stolen. So he went to Barton's house and demanded that he give him his money back. And Barton did write him a check, but Lord knows Redmond couldn't cash no check. So Redmond insisted that Barton's wife go with him to Greenville, South Carolina, to cash the check. But he did make sure his wife got escorted back and got back safe. And he recovered his own horses from a nearby livery, but he also had one of Barton's horses that he stole. Well, now Redmond had a whole pile of charges against him, and even the military got involved, and there was a $1,000 reward, which in today's money is about $30,000. And Redmond was on the run in the most unforgiving terrain in the South, here in these mountains, but he knew how to navigate it, and also the locals helped shelter him. In 1878, when Redmond was only 23, there had already been lots of standoffs with the law and lots of bloodshed with Redmond and his cohorts, and some of them got arrested, but they never caught Redmond. But unfortunately, they did fatally wound his buddy and his brother-in-law, Amos, and that just riled up Redmond and the Southern Moonshiners all the more. During his time on the run, he became a national figure. He went viral. He became a legend and a hero to those who were against the federal revenuers and thought they were the criminals. The newspapers in these parts wrote articles in support of him, saying he was a good man who protected his community. He was even paying taxes for the poor folk who couldn't afford it so they could keep their land, and he was providing for his 7 sisters. Meanwhile, the pro-revenue papers up north, such as the New York Times, wrote articles saying that he was a violent criminal from an uncivilized region that needed reforming. In 1879, he fled to what's now Bryson City, North Carolina, with his wife and kids. And for a couple of years, he kept a low profile, but he was still in the business. And in 1881, them carpetbaggers hid out in the woods near his house and waited for him to walk out, where they confronted him. And Redmond brandished his shotgun and that's when the marshals commenced to shooting him. And they shot him 6 times, but my boy survived. And he managed to run half a mile away before collapsing. But they arrested him and carted him off to jail. And he did recover from his injuries while he was awaiting trial. And hundreds of people visited him and brought him gifts such as flowers and booze and tobacco and whatnot. His case went to trial, and he was found guilty, and he was sentenced to 10 years of hard time in a federal prison in none other than New York State. But whilst he was imprisoned, his popularity never wavered, and in 1884, President Chester Arthur gave him a complete pardon due to the huge public sympathy. So he was released when he was 30 years old. When he got out, he returned to upstate South Carolina with his wife Addie and their 9 children, and he lived a peaceful existence on the right side of the law from there on out. And in 1886, he went legit. He ended up working for a legal government distillery in South Carolina, and he made top-tier booze that regularly sold out. And what he sold was called Redmond's hand-mashed whiskey. And Redmond passed away in 1906 at the age of 51. And his gravestone reads, "He was the sunshine of our house." So what are y'all's thoughts on Major Lewis Redmond? Keep in mind that moonshining wasn't an act of rebellion. It was tradition. It was a means of survival. It was self-determination. It was independence. My own family was in the biz. Some things that set Redmond apart from other notorious moonshiners were that he was debated in Congress. Newspaper articles were written in support of him. He had dime store novels written about him. He was pardoned by a president, and he was employed as a legal distiller. So what are y'all's thoughts? Was he a hero or was he a villain? Let me know what y'all think. The end.